What if eliminating billionaires meant destroying the entire economy? That's the question Mark Cuban, one of America's most outspoken entrepreneurs, just threw into the global conversation. And his answer has people divided. In a fiery online debate, the Shark Tank investor and owner of the Dallas Mavericks claimed that abolishing billionaires would come at a devastating cost. According to him, the only way to truly get rid of the ultra-rich would be to collapse the stock market itself, an action that, in his words, would wipe out the savings of ordinary Americans. Cuban wasn't responding to politicians or economists, but to ordinary users online, who argued that wealth inequality has spiraled out of control and that billionaires are a symptom of a broken system. Instead of backing down, Cuban doubled down, defending the capitalist structure that made him one of the wealthiest men on earth, with a net worth of over $6 billion. He argued that billionaires aren't the problem. The system that rewards innovation and investment is. But the internet didn't see it that way. His comments reignited one of the most heated debates in modern economics. Can capitalism survive without the ultra-rich, or has it already gone too far? Mark Cuban didn't mince words when explaining his reasoning. In a late-night exchange on Blue Sky, he wrote, "Billionaires will exist as long as stock markets exist. Should we get rid of the stock market?" To him, it's simple math. The stock market isn't just a playground for the rich. It's where millions of ordinary Americans keep their retirement savings, pensions, and 401ks. If the government ever forced billionaires to liquidate their holdings or capped extreme wealth, it wouldn't just target the top 1%. It would collapse the value of stocks, destroying trillions of dollars that belong to everyday investors. Cuban explained that about 90% of U.S. stock market wealth is owned by the richest 10%, a fact often cited as proof of inequality. But he flipped that argument on its head, saying those trillions of dollars also represent the investments that millions of Americans rely on for their future. He warned that if the rich were suddenly forced to sell their shares, it would trigger a market freefall. You'd wipe out the savings of more than half the country, he wrote. To Cuban, the takeaway is clear. You can't destroy the billionaires without destroying the system that made everyone else's savings possible. After his bold defense of billionaires, Mark Cuban turned his attention to another hot-button issue, taxing the ultra-rich. Many people online argued that higher taxes on billionaires could fix America's growing inequality, but Cuban wasn't convinced. He fired back with a cold dose of financial realism. You can take every penny that every billionaire has, and other than making a lot of people feel better, it wouldn't pay for the interest of the federal deficit or single-payer health care. In other words, even if the government seized all billionaire wealth, the money would barely scratch the surface of America's financial problems. And worse, Cuban claimed, such a move would tank the markets and trigger a full-blown depression, punishing not just billionaires, but everyone with a savings account, pension fund, or 401k. Still, Cuban isn't against all forms of taxation. He said he would support a windfall tax, a one-time levy on individuals who earn over $1 billion in a single year, targeting sudden, extraordinary profits rather than accumulated wealth. But when it comes to wealth taxes based on stock values, Cuban questioned their practicality. He asked a question few politicians could answer. If it's the value of their stock, will you refund the tax if the stock market corrects or crashes? His point was clear. Taxing paper wealth is dangerous because stock values fluctuate daily. In his view, the better solution isn't to punish success, but to find ways for more people to participate in success. Despite defending billionaires, Mark Cuban didn't deny that capitalism has serious flaws. He just believes fixing it requires smarter ideas, not destruction. When one user suggested capping CEO pay, raising worker wages, and forcing companies to prioritize employees over shareholders, Cuban didn't reject the idea outright. Instead, he proposed something radical: shared ownership. I think every employee should own the same percent of their earnings in company stock as the CEO, he said. In other words, If the CEO earns bonuses through stock options, so should the workers. It's a bold vision that could transform corporate culture, turning employees into investors, giving them a personal stake in the company's growth, and helping bridge the wealth gap without tearing down the system. Cuban's stance isn't just about numbers, it's about psychology and motivation. He argues that when workers think like owners, they're more driven, more loyal, and more invested in the long-term health of the company. It's a way to make capitalism fairer without destroying its foundation. But he also called out a deeper issue, the culture of resentment that fuels online outrage against billionaires. I'm more concerned that no one is trying to figure out how to help everyone else make more, he wrote. To him, the real challenge isn't erasing wealth, it's expanding opportunity. Mark Cuban's remarks instantly set off a firestorm online. Some praised him for being brutally honest. Others accused him of being out of touch with ordinary Americans. Critics argued that Cuban's logic conveniently ignored the real issue, that extreme wealth concentration gives billionaires outsized influence over politics, media, and markets. To them, Cuban's defense of the system sounded like a billionaire protecting his own backyard. On social media, phrases like, "We don't need billionaires to have a middle class," and "the system is broken for everyone else" began trending. Many users pointed to data showing that while billionaire wealth has skyrocketed 400% in the last decade, median household wealth has barely kept up with inflation. But Cuban's supporters pushed back hard. They claimed he was the only billionaire brave enough to say the quiet part out loud, that without the stock market and investment growth, millions of Americans would lose their savings overnight. They also reminded critics that Cuban isn't part of the old money elite. He's self-made, having started with nothing and building his empire from the ground up. To them, he's living proof that the American dream is still possible, if you're smart, driven, and take risks. Still, the debate revealed something bigger. Americans are losing faith in the idea of fairness itself. Some believe the rich play by different rules. Others see billionaires like Cuban as necessary symbols of innovation and ambition. And in a country where economic frustration is growing and class divides are deepening, that tension isn't going away anytime soon. Cuban's argument opened the door to a question that strikes at the heart of modern economics. Can capitalism truly exist without creating billionaires? For many, billionaires are the clearest symbol of success, proof that innovation and risk-taking can lead to unimaginable rewards. But for others, they represent a broken system, where the rich get richer while wages stagnate and prices rise for everyone else. Cuban's take was pragmatic, not ideological. He didn't glorify the ultra-wealthy. He just reminded people that the stock market itself is designed to create inequality of outcomes. When millions of Americans invest in stocks, retirement funds, or real estate, they are participating in the same system that produces billionaires. If you destroy that system, Cuban warned, you don't just take away the yachts and private jets, you wipe out every 401k, every pension, and every home value tied to the market. In short, you can't burn down the house just to get rid of the landlord. But Cuban's critics see that as a false choice. They argue that a society can still reward innovation and success without letting power concentrate so heavily at the top. Countries like Norway and Switzerland, they point out, have thriving capitalist economies but far less wealth disparity. Cuban's response, however, was clear. America isn't built like them. Its economy runs on risk, scale, and momentum, the very forces that create both billionaires and volatility. Take that away, and you take away what makes the U.S. economy the global engine it is. So the real question isn't whether billionaires should exist. It's whether America can find a way to make capitalism work for everyone, not just the elite. Cuban's comments tapped into something much deeper than tax policy or stock markets, a crisis of belief in the American dream itself. For decades, Americans were told that if you worked hard, saved diligently, and played by the rules, you could rise as high as your ambition would take you. But today, many feel that dream is slipping out of reach. Cuban argues that the system still works, but people have stopped believing in how it works. He says the problem isn't capitalism, it's access. Too many people are locked out of opportunities to invest, to start businesses, or to build wealth in the first place. Meanwhile, those who already have money can grow it exponentially through the very markets others no longer trust. This divide has left America feeling like two different countries, one where wealth compounds and another where people are just trying to survive. And as frustration builds, so does resentment, especially toward those who seem to live by a different set of rules. Cuban's challenge to that frustration is simple but bold. Instead of tearing the system down, fix it from within. Make ownership, stock participation, and financial education accessible to everyone. Because, as he puts it, the real revolution won't come from taxing billionaires. It will come from creating millions of new investors who can share in the same success. As the dust settles from Mark Cuban's fiery comments, one truth becomes clear. America's wealth debate isn't just about money. It's about trust, identity, and power. Cuban didn't spark outrage because he defended billionaires. He did it because he challenged a narrative people want to believe, that if we could just take from the top, everything would even out. But his warning was sharper than that. If you dismantle the system that creates billionaires, you also dismantle the system that builds everyone else's savings. To some, that sounds like fear-mongering. To others, it's a wake-up call. The real threat, Cuban implies, isn't the existence of billionaires. It's a society so divided that it stops believing in upward mobility altogether. He's not blind to inequality. He just believes that the solution lies in participation, not punishment. His vision: an America where every worker becomes a stakeholder, where capitalism's rewards are shared more widely, not erased. But that dream depends on something the country is losing fast: faith in the system itself. Because when trust disappears, so does cooperation. And without cooperation, even the strongest economy can crumble from within. So the question isn't whether we should abolish billionaires. It's whether America can learn to grow together again, before resentment becomes the next great recession.